So now is the time for us to train our minds. As bhavana, meditation, the cultivation of the mind, so making it better, developing it, and so that it's higher than it was before. So it's the period of Songkran, of Thai New Year, that's come around. And it's a tradition during this time that the people will pour water over the Buddha statues and over the monks, and also clean their houses as well. And pour water over the hands of their elders, asking forgiveness from one another. So in this tradition, so there are many good qualities there, that we're having and showing our respect for the very highest things, for the Buddha, the Dhamma, the Sangha, showing our respect for our mothers and fathers, for our spiritual teachers, and also for those people in our workplace who support us, our bosses, and those who give encouragement to one another. And there's this tradition as well of bringing about coolness. So we have this kindness during this period, this very hot period, and to give coolness to one another. And what the coolness that's given to the body has its results in the mind as well. It gives coolness internally. But if we look deeper than this, well, how do we give coolness to our minds, and how do we make our minds a bit cleaner? In the present moment, is the mind unclean? Well, it's clean right now in this present moment, but when any sense impressions enter into the mind, then those make the mind unclean. And so it's these nivaranas, or these hindrances, that come up, and they control the mind. So there's this process of delusion that works on the mind. This delusion comes up in the heart, and that then holds sway over the mind, giving rise to aversion or attraction, giving rise to doubts, to drowsiness, and to the mind being scattered and unsettled. And these are the things that bring the mind down, that make it gloomy and sad, that prevent it from meeting with brightness and coolness. So we need to clean these hearts of ours. We need to pour water over them so that they become cool. And the things that bring about heat into the mind are greed, hatred, and delusion. So therefore we need to bring up merit, need to be generous, but in a way that doesn't harm ourselves or others. And this brings up a coolness to the mind. And then there's sila, this virtue. We can see all the problems that come about through lack of sila, that people can harm one another, even kill one another, and this happens a lot. People get drunk and then drive, and may damage each other's bodies or even bring about death because of that heedlessness. But if we have sila, then this brings up coolness. So silena sugating yanti. That the benefit of sila, this virtue, is coolness and happiness and peace. So this happiness and the coolness, this grows little by little. And the highest happiness is that of nibbana, this coolness of heart. So even though externally there may be heat, the weather may be hot, but there can still be coolness there within our minds. But in the present state, there's a lot of agitation, confusion there, and that's because our minds are being conditioned by delusion. And so we worry about all kinds of things. We worry about goodness, about creating goodness, we worry about merit, we worry about bad karma. And this makes our minds lack peace. So we need to come to train these minds so that they turn from being dark into being bright. And we do that through cultivating mindfulness and bringing about samadhi so that it is firm. So sometimes we say to develop samadhi, but really the meaning of this is to cultivate mindfulness and to cultivate this whole path of sila, samadhi and panya. And these qualities of sati, mindfulness and samadhi, they go together. So we try to always be recollecting here in the present moment, recollecting an object in this present moment, and try to do that constantly. And as we do that, then the mind, which is confused and stirred up and agitated about all kinds of things, that agitation will reduce and the peace it feels will increase. So we should try to be aware over this present moment as much as we can, and this is the best thing to be doing, to have our mindfulness here now, to not be thinking about the past. Because if we do, then this can bring up these feelings of happiness or sadness into the heart in the present moment. So the Buddha said we shouldn't let ourselves think about the past with grief. And also we shouldn't be thinking about the future either, because neither of these allow us to feel peace. But rather we keep our mindfulness in the present moment through knowing the in and out breath, and knowing that here in the present moment. So whatever we're doing throughout our day, whatever movements we're engaged in, whether we're standing, sitting, walking, lying down, listening, speaking, whatever actions we're doing, even thinking, then we have our mindfulness there. And we know that this is what is happening. We know what it is that we're doing. And when we have this mindfulness knowing here, then that is meditation already. Because normally whenever there's movement, we take that as being me. And if we don't train our minds, then this word me is always there and it automatically comes up. So we need to train these minds so that we can bring them to stillness. And when they're in a still state, then we see people walking about, and we see that they're not actually people. It's not a being, it's not a self, it's not me, it's not you. And we may have listened to that in terms of theory. We may have read that in the scriptures, but we can still wonder, well, what's that actually like? A body that's not a being, it's not a self, it's not me, it's not you. What is that? And the body is just a body. And we just call it this name, body. But if the mind is at peace, we see that's its real state, that's how it actually is. And it's really amazing. We see the Dhamma, it's incredible. So we should bring these minds and gather them in through a meditation object, through one of these kammatthana objects, whether it's Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, or knowing the in and out breath, contemplating emptiness, contemplating the body, or contemplating how these lives must end in death. Whatever it is that works to gather the mind in, to bring it to peace and stillness, so that it knows about conventions. And when it knows the sammuti, conventions, then the liberation of the mind, vimutti, will appear. So I've said many times about this teaching of Venerable Ajahn Chah, how he got us to know about conventions of all material things, and how the names that we give them are just these conventional names. Whether it's glass or house or Dhamma hall, whether it's layperson or monk, that's just a name. It's just a convention. And if the mind is at peace, then we'll see that it's not a being, not an individual, not me, not you. we see the Dhamma. And so the mind then fills up with happiness, with rapture, through the seeing of the truth. So on these celebrations like Thai New Year, Songkran, there can be rapture that comes up as well through our celebrations. But it's a kind of joy or rapture that's mixed up with delight and mixed up with this kind of diluted happiness in the world. But seeing the Dhamma, there's a fullness in the heart, this rapture, happiness that appears, and that transcends the world. It's what we call Lokuttara. It's beyond and above the world. So may you practice, may you train in mindfulness, making samadhi firm, and then wisdom comes up. It's wisdom that gives us knowledge in line with reality. So we can gain a kind of wisdom through thinking and through proliferation. This is the kind of wisdom that we use in our studies. And also from what we have read, so we may read the scriptures. So knowing about how things are not a being, not an individual, not self, not me, not you. But then when we experience any sensory impression or experience, then ignorance is in control of the heart once again. And then it brings up being, it brings up me, it brings up you, an individual, a self. And it's not just a body, but rather it's all me, it's all you. So if we see things as being, an individual, a self, me and you, then that creates heat in the heart. And in order to clear that out, we need to walk this path of sila, samadhi and panya, of virtue, collectedness and wisdom, bringing our samadhi to a state of firmness so that wisdom can arise that allows us to see clearly. And when we gain that, then there's great ease there. The heart feels very spacious, and right here in this present moment. So keeping the mind in the present moment, this is the way of us practicing. And then we can see how, say, the pain that we may experience, that's not me. This is just kind of the elements at work, and it's not something that I can control. That the mind doesn't want to be experiencing pain, but there's still pain nonetheless. You don't want to get old, but still the body grows old, and this is its nature. And we need to accept that this is normal. We need to accept the normality of this in order to be able to see the Dhamma. But if the mind doesn't accept this, then suffering arises. So then we need to meditate, so that this wisdom and intelligence does come up, that asks, well, is this really me? Is this truly a self? That we don't want to get old, to get sick, to die. So why then do we need to get old, to get sick, and to die? Well, that shows that this is not self, it's not me. This wisdom arises, seeing the true nature of all mental and physical things, seeing how that they are just that way. And we can see that with clarity. But it's not something that comes up through thoughts, but it's a direct knowing, it's direct knowledge that appears. This knowing in the Dhamma. In the beginning, however, we need to bring up this mindfulness and wisdom a lot so we can let go of all these sense impressions. Have the mind here knowing and being up to speed with all of these things, being on top of them so we can let them go. And if we can't put them down, then we need to walk this way of dana, sila, bhavana, of generosity, virtue and meditation, or sila, samadhi and panya. So we need to train ourselves in this, do this a lot, develop this a lot, before the body breaks apart. Because having been born into this world, no matter what we do, we can't stay here for long. So before this body deteriorates, before it ends, we should meditate first. Bring the mind to stillness, and then through that clear out all of these hindrances. These hindrances rather are things that prevent the mind from getting into stillness. So as these hindrances deteriorate or they lessen, then the heart grows in coolness. So both the body and the mind feel very cool. Even though the weather may be hot, there can be this internal coolness through samadhi, through rapture coming up. And when the mind has these qualities of sati, of mindfulness, and of samadhi, then these work to bring up an immunity or to protect the mind from the hindrances and from sense impressions that arise. And also this rapture, this can clean the body as well. It can make the water element in the body pure. And the Dhamma works in purifying the heart, bringing the heart from darkness to brightness. And the fetters, the things that bind the heart, and we can steadily cut those away. So just how when a doctor does surgery, then afterwards they need to bind the wound, they need to close that up, and so that it's firmly shut, that it's bound firmly. And especially if they're doing surgery on the eye, then the doctor needs to be very skilled, using a very thin thread in order to bind the wound shut. And they do that for the sake of looking after the body, for protecting it. But the defilements, they bind our hearts as well. They close over our hearts. And they do that through delusion. So there may be this fear there that there's nothing at all. That maybe if we see into the Dhamma, then there'll be nothing there at all. That there's no self at all. So there's this fear, and the defilements use that to bind over the heart. So we need to try and cut away, to destroy these fetters, destroy the things that bind our hearts, and we cut away thread by thread. And as we steadily do that, then there'll be a feeling of lightness and of spaciousness that comes up. But normally we don't feel the heaviness of these heavy things. But when we bring up samadhi, then we feel that attaching to all of these things is really heavy. This is something really burdensome. And then we start to see more clearly the benefits of developing mindfulness, and also the benefits of virtue and generosity. That these all work to clean our hearts. And we carry on using them, bringing up mindfulness, until that really gathers together firmly and samadhi becomes well established. Until we can see that the body is not me, that it's just elements, and the mind becomes empty. And here we see the Dhamma little by little. So we should practice in this way each day and get it to this point. And sometimes the heart really can gather together, and we can see into reality. And this is really amazing, that the mind changes from being a putujana, one with thick defilements, to a kalyanachana, one with a beautiful and good mind. So may you set your hearts on this holiday, that you have the time to train your minds, so that you can know the Dhamma and see the Dhamma.